You're listening to the Life Friendly Business Podcast. I'm your host, Erin Thomas Wong, business mentor, author, and founder of the Cocoon VIP membership, empowering women around the world to build businesses on their terms. If you want to grow and scale a business that works in harmony with your family and your life, this podcast is for you. Have you ever thought about publishing a book? Or is this something that, like me, you've already done, but you would love your book to be working harder for you? I published Mumpreneur Evolution 3 years ago now. It's a collection of stories and interviews with women in my community about how they're building their businesses around family life. It was an incredible experience putting this book together and then self-publishing on Amazon. And it was a huge learning curve. So I know myself how much there is to learn about publishing a book. But when you do it right, it is amazing for your business and for your brand awareness. So today I wanted to invite Linda Leebrand onto the show. She's a book marketing specialist and self-publishing success coach. She has published 12 books of her own. She is an award-winning author. And in this interview, she shares so many golden nuggets with us about why it's great to publish your own book in the first place, some surprising tips about what your book cover needs to be like, why smaller categories are key to getting that bestseller badge. And she actually talks us through how to self-publish using Amazon KDP. This is a brilliant and comprehensive conversation about self-publishing. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Linda. Thank you for joining me on the Life Friendly Business Podcast today.
Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm excited to talk to you about getting visible through books. But first of all, I would love for you to just explain a little bit about your story and why you started your own business.
Okay, yeah, great. So I'm a book marketing coach and I help self-published authors with their book launches and ongoing marketing so that they can spend more time doing what they like doing. So probably writing or maybe spending more time on their business. But it all started a long time ago. I used to work in corporate marketing. I've always worked in marketing, always loved marketing and selling. And I was working at Madame Tussauds in London in the global branding team. And I was there for about 3-4 years. And then it was time to sort of change to the next job. And around the same time, my husband and I, we were talking about, wouldn't it be lovely to get a dog? But of course, dogs come with the challenges that you need to be nearby. You can't leave them at home for too long. So basically, what I decided to do was to take a 3-month break where we would get the puppy and I would potty train it and make sure that it was all right to be at home. And then after the 3 months were gone, I thought I was going to find a local job and just basically go back to work and life would move on. And then also in those 3 months, I also thought that I was going to write a book. But as we all know, the best laid plans don't always work out. So along came Alfie, the dog. He was not like most other dogs. He was very, very barky, bitey, a herding dog that literally herded me down the corridor of our long London flat. And I remember specifically one morning, he literally herded me down the corridor, biting my feet, nipping at my knees, breaking my clothes, literally shredding them. I just sat down and sunk my head into my hands and I was just like, oh my Lord, what have I done? I'm never going to be able to go back to work ever. This puppy is going to need months and months of training. And of course he did. And if we just fast forward a little bit, I wrote a book about my experience with the dog. I didn't actually go back to work. I started my own business a few years in, which basically was after a few years, we had a new puppy that was the humankind this time around. So my son was born and I started writing children's books. And the children's books were aimed at teaching him my mother tongue, which is Swedish. And so I started doing all of that. And then at the same time, it was kind of time to go back to work then. And I set up my own business. And initially it was thought just to be my writing. And then, of course, I realized how difficult that was to get the word out and so on. Even though I knew marketing, I wasn't quite sure yet about book marketing. So I was learning all of those things. And around sort of that time, I took on a couple of clients. One of the clients was a self-publishing company here in England. So I started working with authors who were going through the same thing. And at this point, I kind of knew how to set up a marketing system. And I understood how Amazon worked and how customers would go through the process of buying your book, getting signed up on your email list, and then you know the website and the whole ecosystem that goes into your book marketing. And but my job at the publishing company was to guide them through the self-publishing process, which is basically taking their book from manuscript through to having it edited and typeset and all those things, and then finally getting them published on Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark. And what I noticed was that most authors, whether they were business authors or fiction authors or whatever type of background they had and whatever type of manuscript they had, at the end of the process, they all had this realization that was, okay, so the book is published. Now, what on earth do I do with this book? How do I market it? What do I like? And they felt so helpless and worried about how they were going to do it. And in my position, it was quite difficult because it was not part of my job to help them with that. But I tried to give them tips and advice. But of course, there wasn't enough time and I had to leave it and move on. And after some time, I realized that actually that is what I should be doing. I should combine my love for writing with my love for marketing. And that's when I started to get my own book marketing clients on board. And now I help both business authors as well as fiction authors to get their launches done and ongoing marketing. So that's pretty much how that went.
What I love about this is the fact that basically what your story shows is that our life experiences lead to not only learning new things, but also are leading to these business opportunities. And I love the fact that normally the women I speak to, the catalyst for them starting their own business is having a baby, but with you it was having a dog, which is awesome. And that actually inspired you to start writing about that experience as well. This series is all about getting more visible. And what I'd love you to just share now is like, why would we want to publish a book in order to help our business get more visible? Like, what can having a book do for you?
So books are incredible. If you run your own business and you're a specialist in your field, for example, if you're like a physiotherapist or if you're an entrepreneur who, I don't know, coach people on how to feel better in their lives or their careers. It's just such a good way to show people that you are an expert in your field. So it basically, it's like almost instant authority once you publish that book. And I had a business client recently who he runs a global business with offices all around the world, and he came to me because he wanted to get visible. He wanted to raise his profile. So he wrote this book about this topic that was very close to his business and that would really help his clients and his customers. And his goal with that was to establish authority in the entrepreneurial field. And then he was looking to get interviews on podcasts, both to promote his book, but also to raise his own profile, his personal profile and his business profile. And then obviously having a book, that it's another product. So it's another income stream. People will find your book on Amazon, for example. And the people who haven't heard of you, who find your book, they might read your book, and then at the end of it, if you're smart, you might have a call to action that says, did you like what you were reading? Did you know that I have this program that helps people like you with this particular problem? Click this link and maybe you get a discount or an offer or an incentive or something. So a book can also work as a sort of a really, really good business card, basically, both for people who've never met you, as well as when you do in-person events. So if you do in-person events and you talk on stage, for example, then you can sell your book at the back of the room. So that's another income stream. And also, once they've read that book, they'll see that call to action at the end. They get reminded about your program or your one-to-one service or whatever it is that you're selling. So it just becomes part of your marketing system, if that makes sense. It is important to remember, though, that books do need a little bit of love and attention. So you will need to promote it one way or another just to get Amazon to understand what your book is about and so on.
And so when you say promote it, do you mean on Amazon or externally?
So I think a bit later in this interview, we're going to talk about some ways to get the book visible on Amazon. So that's definitely one way. But then also when you talk about your products and services online or in social media or in podcast interviews or whatever it is, you just mention your product as part of one of your services, or it could be part of your professional bio, for example, because I think like you say that you're an author and a speaker and a mentor and so on. So it helps establish you as that expert, and by having it in your bio, people then get curious and say, oh, she wrote a book. I'm going to go and find that book.
And, just to share with people, like where to even start with writing a book. I mean, I was very lucky that my mum is actually, has multiple books and, she's had an agent and all those things. So I did have her support and guidance when I was creating Mumpreneur Evolution. But I was, my husband has now published 2 books, self-published 2 books on Amazon as well. They've made it really, I'm not going to use the word easy because it's not easy to write a book and publish a book, but they have made it quite simple as it can be for people like us to publish a book. So can you just walk through in like, very simple steps? Like, so literally people can write this book in a Word document and take it from there.
Yeah. So basically the first step is to write your book. And then before you do anything else, you need to have a professional editor go through the manuscript, because it doesn't matter how good you are at spelling and grammar, you're still going to miss your own mistakes. So, and the last thing you want is a bad review saying that, oh, we spotted so many errors in this manuscript. So yeah, proofread it, edit it. And then on Amazon, you could literally upload a Word document if you wanted to. That works for fiction best, I think, because for fiction, the actual layout of each page is not quite as important as in a non-fiction or a business book, because the text just keeps flowing and flowing, and then you have a chapter number, and then it just text. Whereas for a business book, for example, once your book is ready and the manuscript is ready and proofread, then you are going to need a formatter. So that's somebody who is specializing in setting up books with the right margins and safe areas and the best font for it to look good when you read it. And for business books, you've often got like charts and images and subtitles and stuff to break up the text and to illustrate your examples. So you really want somebody who knows what they're doing so that your book looks professional. Although if you really think that you are good at design yourself, you could do it in Word if you wanted to. I have even in the past done some of my children's books in Canva. So you can do it, but you really need to know what you're doing in terms of where the margins go and the safe areas and how big everything needs to be and how far away from the edges. Otherwise, Amazon will reject it and basically it won't look good and you will get bad reviews. So I would always recommend go with an expert and basically spend as much money as you can afford on making the book look good on the inside, as well as the cover. The cover needs to be professionally designed as well. So at the end of that process, after you've worked with your with the interior designer, you are going to end up with a PDF which contains all the pages of the inside of your book. Then perhaps you work with the same person to create your book cover. That will be a second PDF document. Then what you do is you go over to Amazon KDP and you create an account. You're only allowed to have one KDP account, and that's quite important to remember, because otherwise Amazon will be very angry and shut you down. So you create one account, you log in, and then it's very clear instructions saying, would you like to publish a new book? Yes. Here is where you upload your interior files. Here is where you upload your cover. And then you upload it, and then there's some stuff going on in the background where they analyze everything and make sure it looks good and blah, blah, blah. And they do some checks. And then after a few minutes, it can take quite a long time, you get a preview on the screen where you can see what your book looks like for each page. And if there's any problems with the internal layout, like maybe you missed a margin or put text too far out or something, they will highlight it and show it to you. So then you basically tell your designer that we need to change this thing. They do it, and then you re-upload it. And then after that's done, then you go into the next step in the process, which Amazon will point out to you, and you put in your book title and your subtitle. And it's quite important to know there that you can't change your title or your subtitle after you've published. So you need to be sure that you've got the right title and that there's no typos or mistakes in there. And then you put in your blurb, and then it will ask you for which category you want it published in. You can choose 3. And then it's going to ask you about the keywords. So you put in your 7 long tail keywords in there. And then I think the next step is probably to look at the pricing. So it will ask you how much you want to charge for your book. And a good way to come up with a pricing for your book is to look at similar books in the similar category as yours. And you look at it, and you don't want to price your book too high and not too low either, because if it's too low, then it looks potentially a little bit cheap, and people might wonder, oh, well, is it as good as the other books? And if it's too expensive, then obviously that might put some people off. So go for a happy in between. It's always nice to do prices like, £9.97. It's nice to end on a 7. It just looks good. And then once you've put that price in, Amazon will then show you exactly how much your royalty is going to be. For the paperbacks, this is all automatically done on screen, so you see exactly how it works. But for the paperbacks, they will take into consideration how much it costs to print each book, and they're going to take into consideration how much your royalty is going to be. And then you put in the price that you want to charge, and then they say, this is how much you're going to earn per copy sold. And for ebook, it's very, very similar, but of course, there's no print cost to consider. There is a small download fee that you pay. When I say pay, it's all automated. You never actually pay it. It's just deducted from the money that a customer would pay once they buy a book. But it's all really clear on the screen when you're there. So you put your pricing in, make sure that you're happy with the royalty, and then you move down and look at the international pricing. And you want to make sure that some of the biggest markets like the UK and the US, for example, and maybe Australia, because it's English speaking as well, make sure that all those prices look good. Because what Amazon will do is they'll ask you what your biggest marketplace is. So if you say that the UK is your biggest marketplace, then you're going to put down your price in pounds, and then Amazon calculates the pricing for all the other markets. So what you need to do is you need to go through each country and make sure that it looks good, because it might be some weird pricing like £4.37 or something like that. And of course, that looks a bit weird once the customer looks on the book page. So you want to make sure that it's like a nice £9.97 or something similar that looks good. And then once you're happy with the pricing, then I believe the next step is just to click the publish button, and then it doesn't go automatically onto Amazon. You have to wait a little bit. I think it's usually like 24 hours if they're not too busy. Sometimes it can take a bit longer. So if they've got a lot of books being published, like, for example, in the lead up to Christmas, it can get really busy, then it might take a bit longer, but they will notify you when the book is live. And don't freak out when your book looks a bit funny when it first gets published, because sometimes it can be just the title that's visible and not the picture, and sometimes just the picture, not the, it might not look quite right just yet. Just give it a few hours, and then all the elements of your book listing will be visible in the marketplace.
Thank you. That's fantastic walkthrough of what to do. And also, what do you think that people need to have a Kindle version? What's the benefit of having a Kindle version?
So when it comes to business books, which I guess most people listening to this podcast might be interested in, when it comes to business books, people do like a physical paperback. And I guess it's a lot of the times it's because you like to highlight, maybe make some notes in the edges and that sort of thing. But the ebook is also really good because sometimes people buy both, and sometimes people prefer the ebook. The ebook is obviously easy because you can read in bed on your Kindle, it's backlit and all of that, and you can read it on the beach. But also there's another benefit, which is if you join something called KDP Select on Amazon, then your ebook, your Kindle book, will be entered into Amazon's, it's called Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is a subscription service for people who love books. And so people just pay, I think it's about £10 a month, and they can read unlimited books. So that first of all, gives you access to a completely new marketplace on Amazon. So there's people who buy books in cash or with their credit card on Amazon. And then there's the people who are Kindle Unlimited readers. And the Kindle Unlimited readers don't tend to buy cash books and vice versa. So joining there gives you access to that new market within Amazon. And when you join that program, by the way, you say that you're going to be, you promise that you will only sell your book on Amazon and no other digital online retailers for 90 days. So that's just something to bear in mind, that you can't sell your book anywhere else when you're in this program. But when you're in, as a thank you from Amazon, they allow you to do promotions. You can do countdown deals and you can do free promotions. So perhaps you want to offer your digital book, your Kindle book, for free in return for reviews on your launch day, for example, which is something that I often utilize with my clients. So those are some of the benefits with the not just having a paperback book, but also doing a Kindle book.
What can people do who have already got a book? And then we could maybe give some tips to people that are thinking about whether they want to publish a book.
So if they've already got a book and they find themselves not selling it, what I would always start doing, and I get a lot of clients who actually call me up and literally ask me that question. Why is my book not selling? And what I always do is I go in and I have a look. First of all, I figure out which genre is this book in. If it's a business book, for example, there will be, if you look on Amazon, there will be subgenres. So there will be entrepreneurship, and then there will be subcategories underneath entrepreneurship, maybe female entrepreneurs or female founders or whatever it is. What I would do is I would look at that person's book. I would look at the book cover and I would compare it to all the other book covers that are in the bestseller list for the female entrepreneurs or female founders, wherever it fits in. And if the book cover looks out of place, which is quite common actually, because a lot of people choose book covers for various reasons, but most of the reasons are not commercial reasons. So you want your book cover to fit in so that it looks like it sits comfortably next to the other books in the bestseller lists. You don't want it to stand out too much. And with that, I mean, like you obviously want it to look good and make an impression, but it needs to look very similar to the others. So, for example, if all the other books have got really punchy background color with a nice contrast, non-serif fonts and a simple, clear image in the middle, you do not want then your book to have like a photographic background with some swirly font and lots of drop shadows and things like that. So you want it to fit in really well. And then, so that would be my first point of call. And then what I would do is I would look at their the blurb. How do they describe their book? Does it make you feel excited? If it's a business book, then you most often the whole purpose of the business book is to solve a problem or help someone with something. So, for example, if it was like a how to quit smoking type of book, then it's always good to start with a question like, are you struggling to give up smoking? Because then the customer will think in their head, yes, I am struggling with that. Tell me more. And then you move on to describing how your solution can help them, and so on and so on. And then you always end on a call to action. So that would be the sort of the second step I would look at. And then I would look under the hood. So when you upload a book to Amazon, you have to tell Amazon which category you want your book to be uploaded to, and you want to choose 7 keywords that describe your book. And that is a little bit more technical than it might sound at first, because each of those keywords not all keywords are the same. So a keyword like magic, for example, which is one of the keywords I looked up for a recent client. Magic is an incredibly competitive keyword. So there's a lot of authors who have books that are described with the word magic. Although that's good because it indicates that a lot of people are interested in it, it also means that the competition is ridiculously fierce for that keyword. So you want to have a long-term keyword or a long-tail keyword. So something like magic for beginners or magic for unicorns or something like that. They'll be less competitive, but people would still be searching for it. And then for categories, it's very similar. Some categories are really busy with lots of competition and lots of really, really well-selling authors in it. And some categories are less busy. So, for example, like a thriller category you might need to sell hundreds of books to reach number 1. Whereas a smaller category, like some of the ones that I use for my own children's books, would be something like folklore and culture. You might only need to sell like 10 to get a bestseller badge. So that would be some of the things that I would look into. And it's probably not something that most people who publish their first couple of books would be thinking about, because most people go and think about things like, oh, am I publishing or am I posting enough on Facebook, or am I posting enough on Instagram? And oh my God, this, that, and the other. Although that helps getting traffic to your books, it doesn't help Amazon understand what your book is about, so that Amazon can go about and then promote the book on your behalf.
These are fantastic tips. And one thing, and I remember speaking to you about this before, one thing that I found really surprising was the whole idea that actually you do want your cover to look in line with other books, because with so many other things in marketing, you kind of want yours to stand out and look different. And so I think that's like a huge tip to understand the fact that it needs to look similar. And yourself, when you go to like bookshops, even like the Works and places like that, when you look at the bookshelf and there's like the fiction books, they all look the same, don't they? By all these different authors, they all have that kind of similar feel to them, and it's really interesting that is intentional to get their book seen by similar readers.
Yeah, but that's exactly what you do. I mean, the commercially minded authors, they know that the book cover needs to be on point. So that's why when you go to the bookshop at the airport, for example, and you look at the thrillers, there will be like 100 books with a running silhouetted man that runs into like a desert or some sort of city landscape, and they're holding a gun in their hand. That's just the way it's meant to look. And it makes it easier for the customer to recognize that, yes, this is a thriller. This is the sort of book that I like. This is what I'm looking for. So they don't have to think. And that's kind of the whole point of it.
Thank you. So much good information there. But before we wrap up, I'd love to just chat through the top 3 mistakes that people make and how to avoid them when it comes to publishing their books.
Okay. So mistake number 1 is to treat book publishing as a hobby. If you are an author who is hoping to make money out of your books, I mean, there's two types of authors. Some people do it as art or as a hobby, and they don't really worry too much about the financial, gains. That's absolutely fine. If you're one of those, that's absolutely fine. But if you're hoping to make money out of it, then treating it like a hobby is not the best way to go about it. You need to be prepared to invest in yourself, your mindset, and your actual product, which is it's a bit of a mindset shift. It's like after you've finished writing your book, or when you're actually writing your book, you're probably in a more of an artistic kind of mode. You're creative, and you're doing all these creative things, and you've created this book, which is like your baby. But then after it's done, you need to find a way to kind of put that mindset to the side and put your business hat on and think about the book as a product, not as your baby. And that is a tricky one, as something that a lot of authors struggle with. And I remember when I published my first two Swedish children's books, I was struggling with that mindset a lot. I wasn't sure whether I could invest in illustrators. I wasn't sure whether I could invest in someone to do the layout or the cover. So I did a lot of it myself. And luckily, because I have done some graphic design courses and things, it didn't turn out too bad. And I still got 5-star reviews and lots of sales on it. But the second book I did, where I did use a professional illustrator and I did use a professional person to do the layout and cover, the sales massively different. It's just going so much better when you've had it professionally done. So that's mistake number one, treating it like a hobby. Mistake number two is just uploading your book and hoping for the best. And there's a surprising amount of authors who do that. And of course, when you're an author, you're obviously a creative person, or perhaps if you're a business person writing about something that will help your clients, you're an expert in that field. You're not necessarily a marketer or a specialist in book publishing or anything like that. So it might sound or seem logical to just upload the book to Amazon and think that, oh, yes, so Amazon is going to make this book available in all their marketplaces globally. Millions of people are going to see my book and buy it. But of course, the reality is that Amazon is flooded with books. There's thousands of books being published every day, even every second. So to just upload and hope for the best is not the best approach. So, for example, I'm looking at one of my clients that I'm working with at the moment. They have 5 books coming out with the 6th now in a series. And I just got ridiculously excited when I looked at their backlist because there was so much scope for improvement. They had they'd hired an illustrator for the covers. So that was great. And the books got fabulous reviews and all of that. But there's so much room for improvement in terms of which keywords they'd chosen, the blurbs they'd written and the categories they'd chosen. So I just got a little bit geeking out a bit with that. So I'm working my way through that. And it's just so much fun to see the scope for me as a marketer. I find it very exciting, whereas they're just like more focused on writing their next book, which makes sense. But
well,
now...
yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually. It's that whole thing of like, if it's not your zone of genius, that's where you need to reach out and get someone on board who it
is. Exactly. And I mean, these clients, bless them, I mean, they're so wonderful. They're just like, we know that we don't know. And that's why we hired you, to teach us, to show us, and to, help us implement this thing. So we're working through their backlist at the moment, and they're coming out with their 6th book soon. So doing the launch for that as well. So that's really exciting. So they have realized that you can't just upload and hope for the best, but you do actually need to work on it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your number 3?
The number 3 is something, like I said, most authors, when I talk to them, find the thought of marketing horrendous, which for me, because I come from a marketing background, because I love marketing so much, I just love to show them that marketing doesn't have to be bad. It's actually helping people to find your book. But one of the mistakes that they do when they do think about marketing and when they take action is that they either do no marketing at all because they're just freaked out. They're like, like a hare in the headlights of a car. They just stop and like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm going to do nothing so I don't do anything wrong. Or they read all the blogs and everything and they try to do all of it at the same time. and with no system and no plan and no strategy. And then they go, well, I tried this marketing thing and it didn't work. So I think that's kind of mistake number 3, just not to have a clear plan or a strategy or anyone to help you with it.
Well, and that is exactly what it's like with small business as well, isn't it? It's that feeling of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, none of it sticking, and then thinking, well, I've tried it and it didn't work. But exactly. Actually, it's like you need to untangle each bit of spaghetti and like lay it out well. Wow, there is so much in there. And yeah, for any of you out there who already have a book or are thinking about publishing one, this is an amazing kind of step-by-step guide to how you do that. How can people contact you, Linda, for more information?
Oh, so I'm on most of the social medias. I'm also in the Cocoon. So you can, if you go to my website, it's lindalibrand.com and my surname is Liebrand. You'll find all the information. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. Just search for my name there and you'll find me.
Wonderful. Easy to find. Well, thank you so much for all your tips today, Linda. It's been great to speak to you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much. It's been great to be on your show.
Did you know that your chances of success are 7 times greater with peer support? Deep down, I bet you know what you need to be doing to build your audience. I bet these things have been on your list for a long time, but other things keep piling on top, which feel more important at that moment. But the longer you put off growing your audience, the more likely you are to run out of lead. And building an audience is not a quick thing. It takes time. The right time to do it isn't when you're stressing out about where the next client's coming from. It's when you're doing okay and want to keep building from there. Through the Visibility Mastermind, I have created a framework to help you take consistent, focused action. With the support of other women doing the same, you'll be more likely to stick to your plan and actually start to see the results. It's time to take action. Are you with me? Apply now at lifefriendlybusiness.com/visibility.